and that's causing problems today. Imagine it with the magnifying glass on it, many, many thousands or perhaps even hundreds of thousands more in the wake of some huge natural disaster or prolonged crop failure due to drought. Africa, over 30% of the displaced people in the world are on the continent of Africa, and this percentage and number grows every day. A great demand for stability operations and humanitarian missions, which would fall in the bailiwick of the United States. We just established a new area commander, AFRICOM, in Africa to help to deal with these types of conditions, not just to deal with the symptoms, if you will, but to try to also, through civil engagement of various parts of our armed forces, to deal with some of the root causes and to create an ability of these nations and these people to cope on their own as much as they possibly can. The other way I put it is to help prevent, mitigate, and adapt to changing conditions. Middle East, water scarcity there has been literally for centuries and a cause of great conflict. Asia, the problems here are multiple, but mostly driven by the demographics. Millions and millions of people, 40% of Asia's 4 billion people live within 45 miles of the coast. And just as we saw this very week, ongoing operations right now in Taiwan and in eastern China, literally 1 million people were evacuated in preparation for the hurricane or the typhoon that just came through there, and hundreds killed. Western Hemisphere, we've got a big debate going on in this country about immigration. What are we going to do about it? People for many, many years have been immigrating from the Caribbean, think of Haiti or Cuba, from Central America, South America in some cases, and Mexico, along our southern Gulf and land coast and around the Pacific, because they've been in search of a better life and a better economy. If, due to the consequences of duress, stress, of climate change, imagine people that start looking for the basics of life and the pressure that will increase on our southern border. So the findings, key finding, climate change, national security, and energy dependence, and I'm going to start talking about that in just a second here, are a related set of global challenges that directly affect our national security. We found, and you'll see this right in the May 2009 report, that our current U.S. energy posture is a threat, serious and urgent, and it has the manifestations of national security threat diplomatically, economically, and, of course, militarily. It weakens our international leverage. You know, a couple of years ago, we have this General Assembly in the United States of America, the UN in New York, and we have a guy by the name of Ahmadinejad come over here from Iran. We have a guy by the name of Hugo Chavez come up from Venezuela and insults the American people and our elected leaders because they can. They've got oil. We need their oil. So we have to tiptoe a little bit. Nobody talks about it, but it is a fact. We need to be careful about the positions we take, how hard we are, if you will, on sanctions against, for example, Iran. We don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons, but we also don't want Iran to close down the Straits of Hormuz and blame it on Islamic terrorists, because 40% of the world's oil flowing out of that critical area of the world would make this economic recession look like the good old days. And that could happen at any moment. So it hobbles us. It reduces our moral authority, our diplomatic leverage. And, oh, by the way, last year, our oil bill for the United States, we sent over 386 billion greenbacks out of economy just to pay for oil. That constituted more than a third of our total trade deficit, and that is not sustainable. Oh, by the way, Most of the oil comes from, with the exception of Canada and Mexico, comes from regimes that aren't the nicest kind of people and the nicest kind of governments. A lot of corruption, a lot of money that isn't accounted for, and some of that money finds its way into the hands of these terrorist groups. Proven fact. A good friend and colleague, former CIA Director Jim Woolsey, said, "This is one of the few times in American history that in some sense we are funding both sides of the war on terrorism." So we have converging risks, and it is our conclusion as a military advisory board that continuing business as usual in the energy sense makes an unacceptably high threat level from this series of converging risks. The market for fossil fuels versus finite supplies, increasing demand and rising competition and costs. 6.5 billion people on the earth today, projected to go north of 8 billion, perhaps even as many as 9 billion over the next 50 to 60 years. Every one of those people demanding and deserving, in some sense, a higher quality of life. Much of that driven by energy consumption. So the demand is going really, really high. The oil, natural gas, and other fossil fuels that are easily accessible is becoming less available. Less available. We're not on the verge of running out tomorrow. The gas tank's not going to E, but it's going down. And the consumption is going up. And we need to be making some moves now so that we can have a sustainable energy future and energy security. A lot of folks say, why aren't we drilling offshore? Why aren't we going to ANWR? Why aren't we doing a whole host of things in already authorized public lands? And the answer is, right now, the cost of doing that is more expensive than the oil we can get from easy places, usually from other countries. But the other thing that we've got to consider, even if it weren't more expensive at present, how long can we sustain it? Does it buy us another 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And if we continue on that business as usual path, expecting that we can drill our way out of it, we're going to come up against a wall sooner rather than later. And the options that we have available to us as an economy, as a society, are going to be much more limited, and they're going to cost a lot more in money and, unfortunately, in lives. And I mentioned before, this destabilization driven by the pressure of climate change, key factor. One of the things that we said, mostly focusing on the national security community, is that the planning processes, the national security strategy, the national military strategy, the services plans, programs, and budgets don't reflect enough reflection, or don't have enough reflection on this idea of energy security and climate security, and we need to start doing that. The good news in all of this is that, and I would say this is an opportunity wrapped in some very, very daunting challenges, but it's an opportunity. It does not overshadow challenges that this country has faced in the past, but it certainly is there. And the tough thing about this one is it isn't acute. It isn't like tomorrow. We've got to do something. And in democracies, we don't usually move very quickly until we really see a well-defined threat that is imminent. This one, it's slow rising, but it is rising. And the consequences of inaction are absolutely awe-inspiring. Department of Defense and all of the services, the defense agencies, can do a great deal to contribute to changing these challenges into opportunity because of their technology base and their ability to adopt early stage technology, test it out and ramp it up and get it out to the American public. I'll give you an example from what I call the age of oil. And it was one of the phrases one of my colleagues on the Military Advisory Board said maybe, looking at this energy thing, we should say, America, we gave you the Hummer. Now we're going to take it back.